The weight of the bowl you're holding, the one you'll wash after dinner, has a gravity to it that feels ancient. It's not just ceramic. It's the heft of 10,000 harvests in your hands. You run a sponge around its curve, a modern ritual over a form older than writing. This simple act of cleaning up after a meal sits at the end of a chain of choices so profound it remade humanity. It remade you. For 99.9% of human history, your ancestors didn't do this. They didn't own bowls. They didn't store grain. They moved through the world as bands of 25 or 30 people, their entire lives carried on their backs. Their world was a mosaic of tracks and trails, of known waterholes and seasonal berry patches. In the morning, a woman might shoulder a digging stick and a net bag, walking for hours with her sister, her child slung on her hip. They'd stop at a tuber patch their grandmother had shown them, loosening the earth with skilled twists of the wood. Later, they'd meet the men by the river and share everything they'd gathered. There were no cupboards, no deeds, just the group and the land and the constant, shared work of staying alive. And in that world, something strange to our modern eyes was utterly normal: equality. Not perfect, cookie-cutter sameness. People had different skills, different tempers. But in terms of power, in terms of who decided where to go and who got what, the scales were remarkably balanced. Archaeological evidence from ancient campsites shows that men and women ate the same high-quality food. Their graves hold similar artifacts, tools, ornaments, suggesting similar status. In hunter-gatherer societies that survived into recent centuries, anthropologists observed it firsthand. Decisions were made by consensus. A man couldn't order a woman around. A woman's voice carried the same weight in deciding when to break camp. Mobility was the great equalizer. If someone grew overbearing, the solution was simple. You picked up your things and walked away to join another band. Your survival skills went with you. But then, something shifted. A quiet revolution began in a handful of places across the globe. People started to interfere with the grass. They noticed that if you dropped a seed in disturbed earth, it grew. It was a discovery not of planting, but of staying. And in that act of staying, the entire architecture of human life began to warp. Because farming isn't just growing food. It's growing property. The first field was a line drawn in the dirt. For the first time, a piece of the earth could be claimed. This patch is mine. This water is ours. The grain swelling in these stalks belongs to my family. This created a new kind of future, a surplus, a tomorrow that existed in a storage pit. And with that tomorrow came a terrifying new question: who controls it? The work changed, physically, in men's and women's bodies. Look at the bones. Skeletons from early farming villages tell a brutal story. Women's spines show the distinctive wear of grinding grain for hours every day. Kneeling, rocking forward with a heavy stone, a motion repeated tens of thousands of times. Their knee joints are arthritic decades early. Men's shoulders and arms thicken from the constant clearing, plowing, and guarding. The division of labor became territorial, locked to the plot of land. Her world shrank to the hearth. The granary, the grinding stone, is expanded to the field's edge, the boundary with the neighbor, the watchpost. And with that physical tethering came a biological trap. Children were no longer a mobile handful. They became farm hands. More hands meant more cleared land, more harvested grain, more strength to defend the storehouse. So fertility soared. A hunter-gatherer woman, constantly moving, might have 4 or 5 children in her lifetime. A farming woman could have 8, 10, or more. Her body was perpetually either pregnant or nursing. That cycle became her central, inescapable reality. It kept her close to the home, to the fire, to the storage pit she could no longer afford to leave. Meanwhile, the surplus in that pit became the center of all politics, all violence, all power. It was a magnet for raiders. Defending it wasn't a sporadic hunt. It was a constant vigil. And here, the cruel mathematics of biology played out. On average, men have greater upper body strength. In a world of hand-to-hand combat over stationary wealth, that average difference became a social chasm. The role of defender fused with the role of controller. The ones who guarded the grain began to decide how it was doled out. But this isn't a story of men suddenly deciding to be tyrants. It's a story of a system, once set in motion, that created its own logic. The grain store had to be protected. The fields had to be tended. The lineage of ownership had to be clear. And for that, you needed one thing above all: certainty of paternity. If wealth is going to be passed down, a man must know, beyond doubt, which children are his. In a mobile band, where paternity was often communal and flexible, This didn't matter. In a farming village sitting on 3 generations of stored grain, it became everything. So female sexuality, which had been an open fact of life, became a commodity to be managed, policed, and enclosed. The concept of chastity was invented. It was an economic policy, dressed in morality. You can see the machinery of control fossilized in the artifacts. The spindle whorl becomes ubiquitous in women's graves, a symbol of their now constant, homebound labor. Meanwhile, weapons proliferate in men's. Settlements get walls. And then, the most haunting shift of all, the human remains. The average height for both men and women plummets by several inches, a sign of chronic malnutrition and backbreaking work. But women's health declines more sharply. Their bones show more signs of anemia, more evidence of scarring from infections that take hold in exhausted bodies. The inequality is written in their skeletons. The open, mobile, flexible network of the hunter-gatherer band had been replaced by a closed, fortified, hierarchical system. The farm, the family, the father. The very word family comes from the Latin famulus, meaning servant. It didn't originally mean loved ones. It meant the people under a man's authority, his wife, his children, his slaves. This was the birth of patriarchy, not a sudden conquest, but a slow, grinding takeover that hardened over centuries into the bedrock of civilization. It was built not on hatred, but on the brutal logic of a grain surplus. It traded the egalitarian uncertainty of the wild for the stratified security of the storehouse. And every major civilization that rose was built on this same foundation. Men controlling property, and through property, controlling people. But here's the twist that archaeologists are still piecing together. This wasn't inevitable. For a long time, in those early villages, there was a struggle. The old ways whispered against the new walls. And in some places, they found a balance, a different answer to the question the grain posed. In a few scattered Neolithic villages, archaeologists have unearthed cemeteries where the story is different. Here, men, women, and children are buried side by side, with equal grave goods, their stone axes, their polished beads, their clay pots. No one gender is armed while the other is given only tools for spinning. In some, the oldest and most revered burial belongs to a woman, surrounded by artifacts that speak of leadership. These were places where the surplus was managed, but the equality of the old mobile bands wasn't completely erased. They'd found a way to farm without building a fortress of control around the grain. They are the exceptions that prove the rule was not a law of nature. They are the cracks in the foundation, showing that another path was possible. But they were fragile. They were outcompete, overrun, or slowly absorbed by their fortified, hierarchical neighbors. The system that could field a larger army, organize more labor, and claim more land simply won. It spread like a tide. And we, nearly all of us, are the children of that winning system, which means the weight you feel in your hands isn't just the ceramic of the bowl. It's the weight of that entire inheritance. The arguments in your own family about money and chores, the invisible mental load you carry, the quiet assumptions about who leads and who follows. These aren't just personal flaws. They are ancient grooves worn deep by 10,000 years of grain. Your body remembers the other way. The deep, almost cellular pull you feel towards walking in a forest with a friend, talking as you go, sharing what you find. That's not just a nice weekend. It's a neurological reset towards the rhythm your species lived by for 300,000 years. The profound satisfaction when a decision is made with you, not for you. That's the consensus model whispering. The intense claustrophobia you can feel in a rigid, unfair system, the desperate urge to just leave. That was, for most of human history, your most powerful right. You could walk, and your skills were your ticket. We gave that up for security, for a full belly in February, for a legacy that could bear your name. It was a trade, not a triumph. And like all profound trades, it came with a receipt we are still paying on. So when you stand at that sink, feeling the heft of the bowl, you are holding two histories. One is written in clay and empire, in laws and lineages. The other is written in your bones, in your need for movement, for voice, for a circle of equals under an open sky. That tension isn't a mistake in you. It's the two versions of humanity meeting in your single life. The bowl is clean now. You rinse it, and the water runs clear. You dry it with a cloth, your hand moving in a circle that connects you to every person who ever cared for a vessel that held a meal. You put it away in the cupboard. And that act, placing something in a space that is yours, for a future meal you can plan for, is the miracle your ancestors built. It is stability. It is safety. It is the dream of the storehouse, realized in your quiet kitchen. But the dream had a cost. Recognizing that isn't about guilt. It's about clarity. It means the roles we find ourselves in are not preordained by biology, but sculpted by a specific, brutal, and remarkably recent history of dirt and grain. It means the way things are is not the way they have to be. The cracks from those egalitarian graves are still there, in our collective memory. It ends where it began, with your hands, wet from the sink. They are the same hands that once held a digging stick, that gestured around a campfire, that could pack a life into a net bag and walk towards a new horizon. You are the heir to both worlds, the open steppe and the walled town. Your life is the ongoing negotiation between them. So here is the quiet question the ruins leave with you. As you turn off the kitchen light, in your own life, what feels like the weight of the granary wall, and what feels like the freedom of the open trail?